Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast, hosted by #basketball.com, your home for the very best fantasy basketball tools and articles on the internet. Even though it's not fantasy basketball season, even during the off season, they are the home for the very best fantasy basketball tools and articles on the internet. Go check them out, #basketball.com. I am your host, Mike Catron, and joining me in the off season during the playoffs, the fantasy off season, I guess, but enjoying those playoffs wildly is what I've heard from him. Is my co-host Tyler Watts. What's up, Tyler?
Um, yeah, how about those playoffs?
It's exciting. They've been exciting so far. It's been a good first round.
Yeah, and then I think we've seen some surprising games, which is nothing new in the playoffs, but always something fun. Like everyone freaks out. All the Philly people were freaking out after that first game, like, oh my God, they're gonna lose, they're gonna get swept. Oh, it's over, and it's just the Monday morning quarterbacking gets crazy this time of year, and it makes me laugh so hard.
I feel like even back in the day before NBA Twitter, like if there was the people say, "Oh, it's not a series until the home team loses," and it's like, well, all right, whatever. Usually, like Game 5 is always the most important game. Period. Like that's a fact back then and now. But now everybody's like, if the home team loses, man, that's a big deal. And a bunch of home teams lost in that first game, and then now we have NBA Twitter to completely and utterly overreact, which is exactly what happened.
Oh, no doubt about that.
It's I'm excited. I mean, like we're gonna have 100% a new team out of the East, and I think it's kind of more open than people care to admit. And I actually think the West is a little more open than people care to admit as well. So like, it's gonna be a really fun couple months. I'm excited. It's always good to have a good playoffs. It's been a while since the playoffs have been super exciting from front to back. And I'd like to thank LeBron James for not making the playoffs, for making that happen. Thanks, LeBron. Appreciate it.
Yeah, what will also be interesting this offseason is to see how the balance of power shifts, right? Like, I think someone in the East, especially if, guys like Kawhi Leonard decide to go to the West, like some of those big guys are going to jump to the East and basically, look at it like they're going to have a pretty free shot at making the finals. So I expect it to be another pretty crazy offseason with all that going down.
Not with Giannis around, man. He better win that MVP. Giannis is ready.
Yeah, but see, if the Bucks are going to have to make a decision between Brogdon and Chris Middleton for the most part, like both guys are going to get paid, and I mean they're both restricted free agents, right? But it's going to be difficult for Milwaukee to keep both of them unless they're going to pay a huge luxury tax bill. So I think they're probably going to lose one of them, and they're probably not going to get much as far as free agents because they're just not going to have that much money. So it'll be really interesting to see.
I don't know. I mean, when it comes to free agents, like right now, it feels like, all right, they're not going to be able to do that well. But when Houston wants to make something happen, they make something happen. Maybe the Bucks will start taking a page out of their book and say, hey, let's say the Bucks make the finals. I think there's going to be quite a few free agents who might want to come play with Giannis, and I think if there's a will, there's a way, and they make it happen.
Oh,
they don't have to sign either Middleton or Brogdon if someone's going to come play there.
Yeah, true, and I mean but
maybe Klay Thompson.
Okay, maybe
that's interesting.
I don't know. It'll be, like I said, it's going to be a really interesting offseason because I think you're going to see a lot of player movement, and I think you're going to see some of these big guys, these big name stars want to go to the East, figuring they got a much clearer path. I mean, you mentioned it, right? Golden State's probably not going away. Houston's probably not going away. So the West is going to be really, really difficult again.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be incredibly interesting offseason, probably even more interesting than last offseason, which was pretty crazy, which is why we are still going to be bringing you episodes throughout the offseason. We got the draft coming up. That's going to be, the rookie draft's going to be great. We're going to be doing rookie rankings, rookie drafts. We'll be talking about those rookies. Some of the content's going to be exclusive, though, So go check out patreon.com/watchingtheboxes if you would like to get some of that exclusive content. And we'll also be bringing you any of the free agency signings, dealings, nonsense that happens throughout the offseason. But tonight we're going to look back at what we did a very, very long time ago, back in October, when we like to do this at the end of the year and say, hey, how did we do this year? You know, if you're not improving, a lot of these pundits out there, a lot of these fantasy basketball so-called experts, Tyler, you know, you don't hear about them talk about what they got right, what they got wrong. They just keep moving on. They're just, what's the next hot take? But we're going to go look back at our hot takes from the beginning of the season, from October, from our Bold Predictions podcast. You can go listen to that if you really want to. Go listen to it. Why not? Get some hits on that. But we're going to bring up those bold takes, those bold predictions today, and just see how we did, which should be pretty good. Like I feel like you had a pretty good season, Tyler. I know some of the takes you had, some of the rankings you had did really well. I don't know if I did very well. I'm going to find out, I guess.
And you think you nailed it on the head, right? Like, we're not afraid to say, like, oh, man, this was a terrible call. And I have two that I think are pretty bad, at least two. And that's okay, right? I mean, I have 10. We're going to talk about two that are pretty bad. I have a bunch that I think are pretty good, and some of them might have won you your league if you listen. So that's always good, I think. It's important to say this, too, right? We did these, and they were supposed to be bold predictions. So there's got to be a little bit of leeway on the actual call, in the sense that, it wasn't cool to say, oh, Giannis is going to finish 5th instead of
that's not
4th.
A bold prediction.
Right. That's not bold. There's nothing bold about that, right? Like, there's, a very small margin between 5th and 4th. So we went for things that were a little bigger and that were a little out there, especially during draft season. And I think overall we did fairly well, given that they're supposed to be bold predictions.
Yeah, you're not going to get them all right. And if anyone says they're getting them all right, they are completely wrong. They are lying to you. And we also we're pretty conservative when it comes to making bold predictions. We follow the philosophy of that everything kind of reverts back to the mean. When we look at our predictions, when we look at our projections for stats, we don't usually think too many players are going to be taking a giant leap. Some rankings have all sorts of crazy giant leaps, and we're actually probably going to hit on a few of those that they got completely wrong this year. But when you got to take some risks, if you're going to win a league, you got to take some bold leaps. And I think we did better than usual, better than the average. I'm actually pretty proud of some of these bold predictions that we both made. They're pretty spot on, some of them, and some of them way off.
And that's the way it should be with the bold predictions, I think.
Yeah, more right than wrong. That's all you can ask for.
All right, you want to start or you want me to start?
Let's go. You go ahead and start.
Okay, so these are, I guess, kind of in no particular order, right? They were just kind of the order I wrote them down in, and I don't know if that meant anyone was more likely than the other, just kind of spitballing off the top of my head. So my first one was Donovan Mitchell, who was being picked, according to Fantasy Pros, ADP 21st overall.
Wow.
Would finish outside the top 30 this season.
Well, Tyler, I think you nailed that one.
So in total value, looking at 8 category leagues, Donovan Mitchell finished 32nd.
Yeah.
So that one was pretty cut and dry, right? Like, it was a claim. I made it. He played 78 games, so it wasn't like, it was some really low game total that forced him out. And yeah. I think if people are going to pick him at 21st again, he's probably going to finish somewhere around 30, 32, 35, because just, he's very inefficient, and he does a lot of great things for fantasy, but he does some things that are hard to overcome. And so I just don't know that he's ever really going to reach that top 20 level.
Yeah, we talked about this early last season a handful of times. We were not in on how high everybody was on Donovan Mitchell. We saw that he had played 34 minutes a game basically through the entire season last year. It's not like he came on the second half. He was a starter from basically the beginning of the season. We kept saying to ourselves, what could he possibly improve on? And, he didn't really improve on too much. He had a very good season. We actually, I was going to call him the most disappointing player in our fantasy awards that we did in the last podcast until you had to stop me and say, no, actually that second half, he played so well. He brought his value back up. And since he played so many games, he was ranked really well. And per game 9 cat, even he was 56th overall. So, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I just think this was another case where the hype got a bit too out of control, and therefore, and maybe that's something to think about next year, right? Like if there's a really hot young player, maybe pump the brakes a little bit and maybe let somebody else have him in your league, unless you're a really staunch believer. But it's also important too, and you nailed it on the head, right? Like think about where this guy's going to improve, right? Is he going to get 2 more assists a game? Is he going to get 2 more rebounds a game? Like how is he going to do it? How is he going to get better?
Yeah. And he got a little bit better at rebounds and assists, which props to him, but just a little bit better. And that was it. And so that doesn't really move you from a kind of like a third tier player into that next tier. Like you got to do a lot to get up into those tiers. And it's really, really hard to get into that second tier where people were taking him. And I think you were correct. When you don't get too excited about some of these young players, when you look at that first tier, that second tier, often there's not a lot of new faces in those tiers. Though this year is a little different, actually, with Paul George being a top 4 per game 9 cat player, and somebody I made a bold prediction about. Which I'm just going to get right into. We were talking about Donovan Mitchell, and I said I'd much rather have Bradley Beal over Donovan Mitchell. I predicted that Bradley Beal should be taken over Donovan Mitchell, and that obviously he'd be a top 30 player since he would be over the prediction of Donovan Mitchell being not a top 30 player. And when you look at first off, totals, he played 82 games. But even if you look at per game, 9 cat, Bradley Beal was 14th overall. And that's even exceeds my expectations for Bradley Beal. He stayed healthy, which was something, people occasionally worried about, even though he did pretty well last year. And even in totals, he was 21st. So I was on Bradley Beal early this year, and I'm glad I was because I had him on a few of my teams, and he paid off.
Yeah, and Bradley Beal went 27th, for anyone wondering. So, he went basically half a round later than Donovan Mitchell in almost every league, according to Fantasy Pros. And so, you got a nice little value there. And it's perfect, right? Like Bradley Beal. Now, Beal was helped by the fact that John Wall got hurt and missed a large portion of the season. But, I think Bradley Beal was maybe on pace to finish better than Donovan Mitchell. Even when John Wall was playing, Bradley Beal just took a little bit of a step forward this year. And, he's a very efficient player, which is something that Donovan Mitchell is not. And that helps him. And, we saw him kind of take those little jumps and assists and points this year that Donovan Mitchell's going to need to take to get into that top 20. So that was a real good call by you.
Yeah, it's hard to get to take that jump in the combination of those constant improvements. In fact, especially with John Wall out, he was allowed to improve those assists. But that combination of John Wall being out and the improvements he made in his game, and the fact that he had to carry that team with a workload of 37 minutes a game, that allowed Bradley Beal to make that jump. But going into next season, I think you want to circle that 37 minutes a game, 82 games played, because that's rare. And I don't think you can always rely on that. So, if you look at him as a per game value 14, I don't think I'd be taking him 14th overall next year.
Yeah, but I think he's a top 20 guy.
Oh, yeah. I don't think he's going to have a huge fallout. But I also think, this might be his ceiling based on utilization.
Yeah, that's probably fair to say. And it'll be interesting to see, right? Do the Wizards go full blow it up and maybe try to trade Beal this offseason? Obviously, that would have a big impact on his. Okay, so
he's only 26 too. I just want to throw that in. He's only going to be 26 next year.
My next one, right? Maybe I got caught up in the hype a little bit here. Luka Doncic is going to be a top 40 player this season.
Ooh, all right.
And he was being drafted 57th. So
okay. which a lot of people thought was a little too high. And I think me and you were saying, yeah, no, like Luka's going to be a great player.
So in total value, ACAT, he finished 56th.
All right, that's pretty
so
dead on.
The market actually really nailed this one. And if we look at per game value, and here's really what killed Luka was they set him out a lot down the stretch there. Like he missed 6 out of the last 8 games, I believe. And he was on pace to basically play, almost a full 82. He had missed a couple games here and there. If you throw out the guys who played less than 10 games, Luka finished 53rd in per game value. So,
Okay.
Again, like they pretty much just nailed it. The ADP nailed it. And I missed on this one, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I think you were definitely high on him. Hey, you had got that job that he'd be writing for the Dallas Mavericks. So you're a little hyped up on him, but you weren't off too far. A lot of people thought 56 was high for Luka, a rookie just in general. And if you took him where you thought he was going to be, you didn't really it's not like you ruined your season by taking him where you thought he would go.
I actually think the logic was sound in this, and I'll explain why.
Not terribly efficient guy. That's the problem.
But see, here was the thing, too. Here was the thing that I think really killed it, right? So he was just as good in all the counting stats as I thought he would be. He was over 80% free throw shooter at Real Madrid every season. And he only hit 71.3 this season on a large 6.7 attempts per game. And that's really what killed it. If we talk about him being, 80% even on 6.7 attempts per game, that negative value quickly, rotates into a positive value. And we're talking about probably a top 40 player.
That's true. So it's not terribly off. But, hey, it was a bit of a miss, Tyler. Why don't you roll out another one? Because I think you took more bold predictions than I did this season, it turns out. But good on you, because I think you got quite a few of them right.
Okay, so we'll get into my first big miss. Okay, this one did not turn out as good as I'd hoped. But still, I think if you follow the advice, it wasn't that bad. Okay,
we'll see.
So Nick Batum returns to the top 50 this season, and Nick Batum was being drafted second according to Fantasy Pros ADP. He finished 87th. So it wasn't great, but it wasn't like he killed you. Like I saw in some drafts that I was in, he was going at like 80, 85, 90. Still made him a somewhat decent value. But it was not a great call. That was probably one of my bigger misses of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you are a sucker for Nick Batum. That's your problem. That's on you. I don't know where and how many years you've been on the Batum train. Granted, he was a very good fantasy player when he was in Portland, and always had that allure of being kind of like across-the-board type of a player, very elusive player in fantasy basketball. And you're still on that train. You're still on Nick Batum, and I think, I was out. I thought it was too rich for my blood, is what I remember hearing in that podcast. Even when you're calling him to be in the top 80, I was like, ooh, that's too rich for Nick Batum. But hey, he finished right around there, right around 80 anyway. So you were way too high on him.
Yeah, that's fair to say. But I still think that the theory is not that terrible in the sense that if Batum would have just scored like we had seen him score the 2 previous years, he's way better. He only averaged 9.3 points a game this year. And we had seen a couple years where he was scoring, 12, 13, 14 a game. And had he done that, right, it would have been there. So that one was definitely a miss. I will take the L on that one.
All right. Well, since you are talking about your misses, I'm going to talk about a dead-on accurate hit to make me sound so much better than you at this point in the podcast, because I told everyone on our Bold Predictions podcast that you should 100% draft Danilo Gallinari if he's around in the last rounds of the last 4 rounds of your draft, you should 100% pick him, and that he would play 70 games or more this season. Tyler.
So I'll say this about this, right? He was drafted 118th, right? This was a great call by you. In Yahoo leagues, it was 141st.
Woof.
This was maybe the player Yahoo missed on most. Now, if you played in ESPN or CBS, he was much closer to that number 100 pick,
Still.
which is probably about where he should have gone. And I don't know that he should really go much higher next year. And we're looking at a player with a very, very large track record of getting hurt and not playing that much.
It's true, and it was definitely risky.
Right, and you nailed it this year, right? He played 70 games.
He played exactly 70 games, Tyler.
Yep, and he finishes the 42nd ranked player in 8 category leagues as far as total value goes. So this was a big hit for you. I don't know that I'd go back to the well next season is all I'm going to say.
That's fair.
If he's going in the last round, you know what I mean? Like, sure, he's a great pick again because he does have that upside. But if he's going inside the top 50, I'm running.
Yeah, I'm still wary of taking him in the top 50, but I'll stand by what I said last year. If he's around in those last 4 rounds, there's no reason not to take him. You're going for the upside. Chances are there's going to be a waiver wire player that should be taken in the last 4 rounds, but never got picked, that you could trade out if he gets hurt. Like, whatever. It's totally fine. Those plateaus are very large there at the bottom, but it's rare to get a guy who could finish in the top 50 like Danilo Gallinari. And he's got more wins in the playoffs this year than LeBron James. Just saying.
Yeah. So that was a great call by you. That was a big hit for Mike.
That was a good one. All right, let's get one of your big hits, Tyler.
No, I want to talk about my last one I messed up first.
Okay.
And then, so I was a staunch supporter of Mr. Kyle Anderson, and that did not work out, right?
No, it did not. Though there was that, very small period of time where he was playing after he got traded where, if that's the kind of guy you were going to get, like, he could have been fantasy relevant.
And in, per game value, right? He only ended up playing 43 games, and per game value, he still finished 111th. I predicted his stat line, right? And we can talk about that if you would like. I predicted that he would actually score some. That didn't really happen. I predicted he would get 12 points a game. He only scored 8. I predicted that he would get 6 rebounds. He got 5.9, so pretty spot on there.
Okay.
I predicted he would get 3.5 assists. He got 3.
Okay.
I predicted 1.6 steals and a block, and he averaged 1.3 and 0.9.
Okay, so not too far off.
So I don't think it was the worst prediction.
Did you predict 58% from the free throw line? 58% from the free throw line, because that's piss poor.
Yeah, I thought that Grizzlies team needed a little bit of scoring though, and I thought maybe he could be someone who did a little more scoring. Yeah, I'm going to take a loss on that one though, just because the injuries really hurt him, and if you picked him in your fantasy league, he was definitely a big disappointment. But I still think he did a lot of things that helped you when he did play, and just the injury was unfortunate.
Yeah, I think he might be a guy late round next year to take a look at, because he didn't do that bad, and I don't know what that Memphis team's going to look like next year. So it's worth still keeping an eye on him as a fringe fantasy player who has a little bit better upside, especially in head-to-head leagues where you kind of just keep scraping away on those blocks of steals and rebounds that he actually gives you. I'm going to talk about one that I got wrong, Tyler. So I wasn't all perfect. I took less chances than you, but I still got some wrong, Tyler. And I was on the hype train. I think we were both kind of on the hype train for Josh Richardson in Miami. Now, Miami was kind of one of those elusive, and we said this before the season started. The rotation is going to be the key to this team, and it was. It was an elusive team to figure out what that rotation was going to be, but we both were definitely in on Josh Richardson just because there was a lot of hype around him, even coming from the front office there in Miami, and we both thought he would be a top 50 player. I thought he would be a top 50 player. I'm not gonna rope you into this prediction. I thought he was going to be a top 50 player. He was not.
But you're saying you're taking the loss on this one, but I don't know that call was that bad.
I mean, it wasn't good. He was fine. He had a good, solid season, but per game, you're looking at a 72nd ranked player.
So here's what I'll say: he finished 70th in total values as far as 8 category leagues go. He was being drafted 90th.
Oh, well,
by Fantasy Pros ADP. So I kind of tend to want to give you a semi hit. You didn't hit the bullseye on this one, but you hit the target.
Yeah.
Right? Like if he's going 90,
I'm on the board, right?
If he's going 90 and you get 70, 75th value, like that's not or 70th value, that's pretty darn good, man. That's 20 spots.
Well, that's perfectly fine, but if you were taking him in the top 50 and he gives you 70th value, that's so good.
But see, here's the thing that I would say, and this is maybe kind of the point that I try to make at the beginning, right? Like for bold predictions, I'm not saying if I say he's going to be a top 50 player, I'm not saying pick him in the top 50. I'm saying if he's going 90th, pick him the round before that, right? Pick him in the 80s, pick him in the late 70s. Well, you still got a little value out of that.
Yeah, that's true. And, some of these things at the time were bold predictions. Beal over Dunham and Mitchell, Josh Richards being a top 50 player. And in retrospect, some of those things don't sound that crazy. I'm not even sure Josh Richards in the top 50 was that bold, to be honest.
Well, I mean, by the ADP, he was going 90th. So
he was going 90th, so maybe it was a bold prediction.
So that sounds pretty bold to me. So here's what I nailed, right? I'm going to give this one a slam dunk, an easy score. I had JaVale McGee as a top 100 player.
Wow.
JaVale McGee, right, if we remember, during draft season, getting drafted 134th ADP, finishing the year 61st.
That's even with the very, I guess, lackluster tail end to the season for the Lakers and for JaVale McGee. He was so good in that first half. He ended up 61st. That's impressive.
Yeah, so I am going to give that one a slam-a-jam-a dunk. I feel like that was a very good – that was probably one of my better calls. And if you remember, I was kind of in on him all preseason long. They really just didn't have anyone else to play there.
Yeah.
And he was going to be very good. So, yeah, if you picked him, even just at the tail end of the top 100, you got a very, very nice value there. So, props to JaVale. Yeah,
you nailed that one. You were definitely touting him a lot more than I was, and because I remember just being like, "Wow, you're really, really on JaVale, huh?" And per minutes, like you're not wrong. I just didn't think the minutes would be there. And I think a lot of people who ended up taking your advice probably took some of our advice later in the season when we were doing our waiver wires, when we were doing our kind of like weekly preview podcasts, and say, JaVale McGee can't be ranked much higher. Buy low, sell high podcast. We probably told you to sell high on JaVale McGee, so you might have even made out double. You got all that good production, you sold high on him, you got some good players back, and you missed that second half slump from JaVale McGee. So that was like a win-win for everybody who was following you this year, Tyler.
Yeah, that was probably one of my best calls.
Nice work. That's an excellent work. I think I only have one more bold prediction here. Big Chili Willie Stein, Willie Cully Stein. I had him as a top 100 player. I don't know if that was terribly bold. People like Willie Cully Stein, but they were going to get Marvin Bagley. We didn't know it was going to go on in Sacramento, and he was a top 100 player.
So ESPN screwed you on this one as far as the Fantasy Pros ADP, because he was going at 78th on ESPN. Oh. If you were in a Yahoo or CBS, he was going 111th and 107th respectively. So there, you could get a little bit of value if you thought he was a top 100 player. He finished in total 8 category value at 83rd. So again, another win for you. I feel like you did good there. Now, if you
only 27 minutes a game too.
If you were picking him in an ESPN league, though, number one, I don't know why you were picking him there. Number two, you basically got the value, I guess, you picked him for, but it was still kind of a little bit of a loss there.
Yeah, and number three, stop using ESPN's rankings listen to the Watching the Boxes podcast. Unless ESPN wants to sponsor us and put us on board, then we will make sure those rankings get a lot better. We are taking all offers, any offer. If you are currently listening, ESPN executives, just throwing it out there.
So this one I went bold, and I went too bold, and I should not have done that. But I still feel like this guy maybe helped you a little bit. I had Cedi Osman as a top 75 player. Okay. He did not even have an ADP in ESPN. Like, Fantasy Pros did not rank an ADP.
They're out on. They're like, no, never mind.
He was going 188th in Yahoo and 154th in CBS, giving him an average draft position total of 185th. He finished as the 129th ranked player. So he was basically a waiver wire guy all year. So that one's probably an L, but I still feel like I located someone that was somewhat standard league relevant for the whole season.
Yeah, you took a chance on a guy to blow up, and at 24, actually he was 23 during the season. Like, he ended up being standard league relevant when other sites didn't even have him on the board. So I think that's a pretty good call. It might have been bold, but that's the whole point. It's bold.
Right. And the next one kind of goes right along with it, right? I said Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was a top 100 player after the new year. He was undrafted in CBS and in Yahoo and ESPN leagues. He was going 162nd in CBS leagues, and he finished as the 80th ranked player for the season.
That's pretty nice. And he had a really good run down the stretch once he was getting more minutes with the Clippers. And he's someone to keep an eye on for next year. Like, he's tons of steals, good blocks. If he starts hitting that three, he gets his 3-point shot a little bit better next year. This is someone who could improve. He's not even 21 yet. Can't even go to the club. Probably just at home playing Fortnite. And also more wins in the playoffs than LeBron James at the age of 20. Pretty impressive.
So I feel like that one did pretty all right. I feel like he did well, and so I'm backing him on that one.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a very good one, especially since people were not too excited about him. I don't even think I was. I don't think I was very excited about him. So I think that was actually a really good call, right? And if he was hard to stick with because he wasn't playing that many minutes, and so maybe that's why I don't want to give myself like a ton of credit for it. But if you stuck with this guy all year, you got a top 80 player. Hey, that's a starter.
Like, that's pretty flipping good. So I'm a big fan of that call. I think that was good. My next one, Derrick Rose ranks ahead of Colin Sexton and Kevin Knox this season.
Yeah, Derrick Rose.
So if we go per game value, right, which it's important to do that because Derrick Rose crapped out after 51 games.
Hey, he's got some bad knees, man. Get off his back.
He finished 105th. Colin Sexton finished 179th in per game value. And the other man here is Mr. Kevin Knox, who finished 276th.
Woof. That is terrible.
So I think maybe, and I'll check this in total values because I only checked it in per game. I think maybe even in totals.
I think he might have beat him in totals, at least one of them.
Let's see here. He was 169th.
Okay.
Kevin Knox was 217th.
Uh-oh.
And Colin Sexton did edge him because he played all 82 games at 126th.
I'm not even going to give Colin Sexton any credit for that at all. And I just want to remind our listeners that Derrick Rose scored 50 points in a game this season. I just want to remind everybody that.
Here's still why I think that was a hit. Okay?
That's definitely a hit.
Derrick Rose had an ADP of 174th by Fantasy Pros.
Which seems actually kind of ridiculous that people were even drafting him.
But the other two were being drafted in almost every league because people get hyped on rookies. So, I mean, I'll give you the numbers if you want them. But Colin Sexton, 112 ADP. Oof. Kevin Knox, 104th.
Ugh, brutal.
And so I think, and And if you remember, I think we talked about this on the podcast, when we did the predictions. I said Derrick Rose. I pinpointed Derrick Rose because I'm like, he's somebody nobody's thinking about drafting, but he's probably going to play and play good when he's healthy. And these other two guys, even if they're healthy, probably aren't going to play that good. Yeah. And I think that point stuck, full stop. I think, both those guys played quite a few games and were kind of crap.
Well, neither Sexton or Knox, there was some hype around them, but it was it wasn't Doncic hype. It wasn't Trae Young hype. It was just normal rookie hype. And I sympathize with people in their final rounds taking a chance on a rookie, seeing what we could do. But, you have the eyes for the rookies, Tyler. You know what you're looking for, and you dogged them for their lack of ability to do anything other than, they're kind of one-trick ponies. And even then, you weren't sure about their field goal percentages or anything like that. And so that's why you were on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander instead of these two players. And I get it. Take a chance on a rookie, but don't take a chance on all the rookies. Every single one of your last-round picks can't all just be flyers. Sometimes it pays off to take those veterans that that are going to be 80th, 90th. Your Nick Batums, your Derrick Roses.
Yeah, so I think that was a pretty good call, and I'm going to stand by that one. My next one is I probably should have said I took 3 losses because I think this one's a loss. Devin Booker, who had an ADP of 25, I said he was going to take the leap and finish in the top 15. If we look at per game values, especially ACAT, he finished 20th. So he kind of was a little better than where he was drafted as far as per game. He got hurt a little bit, only played 64 games. Not a great call by me.
I feel like you kind of lost on a technicality. Down the stretch there, it was healthier. He was playing solid minutes. Now, also those games down the stretch really don't mean anything. It's a lot of junk time. But he's here. If he stays healthy next year, he's on pace to be a top 25 player.
Well, and here's where I think I sort of nailed it. Was I said he's going to get a lot of assists this year?
Yeah,
and
he did.
He averaged 6.8 per game, which was better than a lot of starting point guards. So I won't say I missed the board completely on that one. I thought he played well and he played better than. He probably had the best stat line of his career, right? It didn't work out because of the games and other things. So here's my absolute best call of the year. Are you ready for this?
Let me hear
it. So Nikola Vucevic, who was going 47 as far as ADP, and that was very much skewed by CBS leagues. In Yahoo, 53rd, in ESPN, 68th. And if you remember, everybody was hyping the Mo Bamba. Oh, I drafted Mo Bamba. Vucevic isn't going to play, blah, 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 blah. I said Nick Vucevic returns to being a top 35 player. He even far exceeded my expectations. He finished 10th in total value in 8 category leagues. I had Nikola Vucevic in almost every single league I played in. And, yeah, I think he was a big reason behind my success because obviously he way exceeded his production. And there were 2 or 3 leagues where I literally got him in the late 50s, early 60s.
He probably swung most leagues, and you were on him by a lot. I think you were on him harder than I was. I was in agreement that after that 3rd round or so, he's got to be a pickup because he was relevant. He was a top 50 player in limited minutes last year. So if he's not limited in minutes, it's all upside from there. And, we were both kind of on him. You were on him a lot more. And somehow you could have been on him a lot more and still been dead on with this pick. So that shout out to you on probably making one of the more league-changing bold predictions of the year. I think I'm going to have to give you the crown for best bold predictions.
I just feel like, some of the ones I nailed were big wins too, right? Like we talked about the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander thing. If you kept him, that was actually a pretty big win. JaVale McGee, to get a guy that late and you're pretty much your last pick who can be a top 60 player, that's huge. To get someone like Vucevic who you could pick right around 50 that ended up being the top 10 player, that was huge. So, some of the ones I think were so big that they helped you win your league, and obviously that's the goal.
Exactly. I mean, that's the whole point of taking these big, bold predictions. Is that for the most part, you kind of stay within your normal variance. Everything reverts to the mean, but then you take those bold predictions that will make the difference. And I think a lot of these bold predictions that we made might have made some differences for some people, even though we were a bit off on a handful of them. But really, our percentage, this might be our best year.
So I got a question for you to close this out.
Okay.
You ready for it?
Let me hear it.
What is your early bold prediction for next season? Maybe it's a bold prediction for the off season, like I don't know, someone is going to go to some team, or maybe it's like you got a guy you're spotting that you think is going to be a top whatever player. And obviously, like this might get thrown out by June when he gets traded to another. Yeah, when he gets traded to another team and like you're like, oh well, he's not going to play as many minutes, he's not going to look as good, whatever. So it can be anything really.
All right,
fun.
My bold prediction is Klay Thompson is on a new team, which bumps his fantasy value next year. He improves because he's carrying a team and he can show off a lot more of the skills that he has.
Ooh, he's going to go for his own.
He's going to go for his own team. Klay Thompson is going to be the number one player on the team, the number one option on the team.
That is bold. I'm not sure what team that team is.
I don't either. I have no idea.
So that's fun. I like that. That's very, very, very fun. I'm a big fan of that prediction. So if we're going to talk,
I hope so. I just think it would be good to see him. I think he's a little underrated.
If we're going to talk off-season predictions, I am going to go with who. There's a couple of them. I got a couple that I think are going to happen this offseason. I think we see an all-star get traded before it even gets to free agency. So I'm talking like a 2019 all-star.
Wow. Okay. Before free agency.
Yeah, so like during that draft period, I think we see a 2019 all-star get traded.
Wow. Okay, yeah. Probably for someone in this draft, maybe.
So I think that's going to happen. I don't know if that's bold or not.
Well, if it's AD, it's not that bold, but if it's somebody else, I think that's kind of bold.
Yeah, and I think is it crazy to think that we see two all-stars get traded like we saw in the Kawhi Leonard trade, right? That DeMar DeRozan went back and he was an all-star. So I think maybe that Anthony Davis, like if it's the Anthony Davis one, I think we're going to see a non-Anthony Davis all-star get traded. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's pretty good. I'm gonna piggyback on that whole prediction and say DeMarcus Cousins re-signs with the Pelicans, so they keep Anthony Davis. They run it back.
I actually kind of think that happens now too, just a little bit. Not the Cousins part, but that they could keep Davis. I also, and this is maybe not that bold, I also think that we see a new super team form at some point this summer.
Okay. That's not terribly bold with all the talk of Kyrie and Kawhi and KD and all looking for a new home. I don't know if that's too bold, but, it will be interesting to see another super team appear out of nowhere.
Yeah, and that's what's fun about it, right? Is like I make this joke all the time, but like people say, oh, my team is stuck for they're never going to be that good, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, in the NBA, isn't that the one league where you're never really stuck for that long? Like at any moment, right? If you're the team with all the cap space, like, or if you can just got some contracts that are tradable, you can dump all your players and your team can become, 3 superstars just signing up.
Yeah, completely out of nowhere. It's if you have a GM that can pull it off, and a lot of these trash teams that are at the bottom of this lottery don't really have very good ownership or GMs. So maybe Atlanta seems like it's on the upswing.
Yeah, the Hawks seem like they're doing well. So speaking of that, I wrote a very maybe not that very, but very, to me, interesting piece about the case, the debate between Luka Doncic and Trae Young for Rookie of the Year.
Okay.
And
A lot closer than I think people ever thought it would be.
I don't think it is.
Well, I think it's a lot closer than people thought it would be because I didn't think it would be close. I'm still going Luka over Trae. I don't think people should be arguing for Trae, but you can make an argument for Trae, and I kind of respect.
Okay, so make the argument for Trae Young. Go ahead.
He's excited. The only person on that team is worth a damn.
Oh no, I don't think so. I think John Collins is decent.
Incredible second half.
Okay, so I made the case in the article that if you're going to base it on the second half, which most people base it on the post All-Star break, right? Because even if you want to say second half, Trae Young wasn't that great. The numbers where he's really better than Luka are once the Mavericks made all those trades and got rid of every starter they had other than Luka. Okay, so do you know how many games that was for Trae Young?
How many?
23.
Okay.
You know how many games that was for Luka?
No.
17.
Okay.
So if you're going to make that case, I'd argue that you're giving me the fact that Luka was better for the first 55 to 58 games.
That's a very good rebuttal to that argument, which is why I'm not making that argument. I'm saying that is the argument you would make if you were trying to make Trae Young. And that's what I'm trying to give props to, is that Trae Young should not be in this conversation, and he is. And a lot of people thought this would be one of the worst trades in the history. A lot of people of the NBA and a lot of people thought Trae Young would be a huge bust, and he's not. And I like that. I'm glad that he's not.
I wrote that in the article too. Like, none of the things I say here are to disparage Trae Young. I thought Trae Young had a great rookie season, and he very much like Luka Doncic exceeded all expectations, especially as a rookie, right? As a 19-year-old rookie. They were both 19 when the season started. Like, they were both fantastic, but at the same time, like, the debate is there is no debate. Like, it's a full season award, and Luka was way better for pretty much the entire season.
I don't disagree with you, Tyler. Where can people read that article? Where should they find your work?
You can read it at the Smoking Cuban, or you can just follow me on Twitter, and stuff all usually gets tweeted out at Tyler P. Watts.
Cool. And everybody, you can follow me at Watch the Boxes, where I'll be making the prediction that the Finals MVP will be Lauri Markkanen and the Bulls will win in 6 next year. That is my true bold prediction to end this rehash of our last year's bold prediction. I think we did pretty well, Tyler. And a lot of these bold predictions, a lot of this information was exclusive before we released it to the wild. To our Patreon subscribers, shout out to all you who subscribed on patreon.com/watchingtheboxes this season. You guys really, really helped us support the podcast, and it was a lot of fun this season. And we want to thank all the listeners for listening. We want to thank the Patreons for Patreoning. It's not a word, but we really appreciate you guys, and we'll still be bringing you these podcasts throughout the summer. And enjoy the playoffs. We'll see you soon.